The story that I heard many years ago from someone that I later learned isn't completely trustworthy is still worth telling today. It's a story about going to a church that this fella had never been before. He was at an age where he was trying different churches. He wasn't quite sure what was the best Christian community for him. He really wanted to be Christian. And so he was doing the pre-internet thing of looking in the yellow pages at churches and sort of going, choosing one and heading out there. Well, he went to this church and he was a bit Episcopalian, and it seemed very much like the service he was used to. There were prayers, there were hymns, there was a sermon, and near the end, there was communion, kind of like what we'll have today. But it was a little bit different. There was a different set of prayers around it, and then rather than coming forward, the congregation passed among themselves the bread and what turned out to be grape juice rather than wine. And it came to him very quickly, even though he was sitting in the back, the little set, you might say. And being an Episcopalian, he took the bread and ate it, he took a sip of the grape juice and passed it along. Well, afterwards, there was a bit of a commotion almost. And what he came to learn was that in that little congregation, you only were allowed to take communion if you had a certain level of closeness with God. And it was never clear to him what that was, but he learned it involved a lot of paperwork, because he actually had to go into an office after church and fill out his information because he had received communion. And therefore knew he was getting into heaven, and was almost well, tell us what that's like, because no one there really knew what it might be like. I tell you this story because in the Episcopal Church we have almost the exact opposite type of dynamic. We hope everyone receives communion, but this morning's gospel is about receiving communion. That's not obvious that it is. In the Gospel of John, John does not have a Last Supper event of Jesus blessing bread and wine and passing it among the apostles like in the other three Gospels. He does instead at the Last Supper the washing of feet. But John does have this story of the feeding of the thousands. And while the other Gospels also have similar stories, this one John frames and describes in such a way that it's full of imagery and symbolism of the Holy Eucharist. Now, one of the things that might be helpful to know is that John is the youngest of the four Gospels. It's the most recently written, probably still no later than 60 AD, probably before that. But it was probably written a decade or two after the other three. And so John had the advantage of being able to look around and see how particularly the Gospel of Mark was being interpreted and how it was shaping people's lives. And so in John's Gospel, there's a whole different vibe through it that, again, easy to overlook Sunday to Sunday. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus goes around doing all sorts of miracles. People are healed, demons are cast out, storms are stilled, all sorts of stuff happens like that. You might say lots of special effects. In the Gospel of John, before Jesus is resurrected, there are only 7 miracles total. I mean, that's a slow chapter in the Gospel of Matthew. And in the Gospel of John, Jesus lives as a public minister for about 3 years, whereas certainly in Mark, it's only 1 year. So the proportion of time spent on miracles in John is a fraction of the other 3 Gospels. So that makes us, really, if we're paying attention, really look at what's going on with each of the 7 miracles. And today we have 4 and 5, the feeding of the multitude and Jesus walking on the water. So we've got a real treat today, 2 miracles for John. Well, what's going on with this miracle of the feeding in John is a corrective to that story I told a few moments ago. We believe the Holy Spirit inspires the Scriptures. And so I think John's story of the Eucharist was a corrective for what God anticipated happening. And that is that for way too long in Christian history, and it still happens today in certain denominations and certain churches, people were told, you have got to be really to 1,000 worthy before you receive communion. That communion is for the chosen. Communion is for the very blessed. Communion is for the prepared. Communion is something you do with lots and lots of intention. And through the Middle Ages, there were times where people would go years and years without receiving communion. Even in the Roman Catholic Church, where there was such an emphasis on sacraments, because people figured it would take that long to get themselves ready. Again, I think there was an anticipation of that misbehavior on the human race's part. And it's understandable. Humans want to do things right. Humans want to honor God and honor God's desires. And there's a certain amount of humans who like to have exclusive clubs. So a lot of times through Christian history, including today, churches become exclusive clubs with that exclusive moment being who gets to receive communion. One of my favorite stories in the way that it's so yucky is in the 1800s in certain sections of the Lutheran Church, particularly in the conservative synods like Missouri Synod. When you came forward to receive communion, you had to present a token to the usher that the pastor had given you to show you were ready and worthy to receive communion. And if you didn't have a token, you were sent back to your seat. I don't think I'd ever go to church again. That happened to me. Well, John, a certain awareness that that kind of junk is going to happen, he wrote this story in a way that corrects it. Because this is a Eucharist for which no one besides Jesus was prepared. This is a Eucharist that seemed to happen on the spur of the moment. That there were thousands of people gathered, it was a nice sunny day, they were in a meadow sitting on the grass, and Jesus said, feed them. And the apostles said, to use our current terminology, we don't even have bread and wine for that. He said, no, go for it. And, of course, what we hear is that the very limited amount of bread and fish, which in the ancient Christian church was the sign of the Eucharist, not only was there enough to feed everyone, but there were 12 baskets left over, which symbolizes the 12 tribes of Israel, which symbolizes the eternity of God's kingdom. Those people, not even the apostles, were prepared for that moment. No one had said the proper prayers. No one had fasted long enough. No one had sung the right hymns. No one even knew what they were getting into. And they still got to receive communion. They still got to receive communion, and there was enough left over that a whole lot more people could have received communion. And that's the message for us today. Is that whenever we as individuals think we're not worthy to receive communion, whenever we as individuals are judging someone else and saying they're not worthy to receive communion, we're supposed to listen to this story from John, in which everyone was worthy. There was no one who said, no, you don't get a piece today because we know you did X this morning or that last week or this with your lifetime. Instead, everyone was welcome. Everyone received, and there was enough that a whole lot more people could have. We've ignored this story as Christians off and on, almost from the get-go. That's why John had to write it in this way. We, as individuals in our lives, often ignore this story when we're feeling particularly guilty or ashamed or unworthy. So our task today as Christians, our task this morning, is to listen to the invitation in this story, that every one of us is invited into God's love, symbolized and strengthened by receiving communion. Everyone we can think of, and people we can't even think of, are welcomed to this holy meal. No limitations, no prerequisites, no preparation. Simply come and eat. And there's enough for everyone, and there's enough for the people we don't even see, and there's enough more than we can imagine. And there's not only that for communion, but even more so for God's love for each of us. That whenever we think we're unworthy, we're unprepared, God's love is still there for us, is still filling us, is still blessing us. It's good news. There's enough for all. The baskets are overflowing with bread. Come and eat. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.